Donald Trump and his entire family are loading up on Bitcoin. And this is really important for you to understand. Whatever you think about him and his family and the politics, all that aside, the important thing for you to understand is that the world's elite, connected, and informed are buying up Bitcoin massively, proving that you're not too late to Bitcoin. And most people that are in these higher upper levels of society, the billionaires and the big politicians, they are here. You were here before them, most likely, and you are definitely here before the majority of the rest of the politicians figure this out. Let me explain why Donald Trump and his family are so bullish on Bitcoin and the evidence we have for this. I have 5 primary reasons here as to why you should be thinking about this. The Trump family has acquired over $2 billion of Bitcoin while Bitcoin was at a price over $100,000. They were buying Bitcoin when it was under $100,000, or at least according to their word, and they have definitely bought multiple billions of dollars worth of Bitcoin over $100,000. Now, is it possible that they've been duped? Sure. Is it possible that they think that Bitcoin is going to be flat or go down? Sure. But in my view, that is a pretty large bet, even though they're billionaires. Like, this is a very large bet, even with their net worth. This is a very high percentage of their net worth. This is a very large bet that they think Bitcoin is going to go up. They're not buying Bitcoin hoping for a 10% or 20% move. They're buying Bitcoin assuming it's not going to be anywhere close to $100,000 over the course of the next few years. They're assuming it's going to $200,000, $300,000, $500,000 a coin. They are not getting into something with such a decisive statement of their branding, of their personalities, and of their businesses, and of their capital, and the capital that they raise that's indirectly theirs, right? They're not going to take these kinds of bets unless they genuinely think that there are going to be multiples upwards from here. And so it doesn't matter if Trump understands Bitcoin or not. It doesn't matter to what degree you like him or not. It's just he's putting his money where his mouth is. And even if you don't think he understands Bitcoin as much as you do, and frankly, you could very well be right, the reality is he's putting his money in that direction. The other thing, of course, that Trump has made himself very famous for is that he has been demanding consistently for the Federal Reserve to lower interest rates. Obviously, there's a lot of controversy and drama around that, but the reality is that Donald Trump wants cheaper interest rates, and cheaper interest rates are really, really bullish, not only for Bitcoin, of course, but for housing, but for everything in the world that relies on credit and liquidity, right? This is something that is very, very optimistic for the future of Bitcoin price when denominated in US dollars. The Trump family, in particular his sons, have been saying repeatedly that they believe Bitcoin is going to $1 million. This gets back to my point I mentioned earlier, right? When they say Bitcoin goes to $1 million, and I see news articles about this, or I see reports on this, I read the comments down below, and believe me, we'll get to some negative comments in just a moment, and they are really, really juicy. But the reason why this is an important point, I think, to make is that when I see these news headlines and mainstream news outlet says that Trump or Trump Jr. or whatever, that they believe Bitcoin's going to $1 million. People in the comments down below, or critiques of those articles I see, say, oh, they don't actually think that. I think they do think that. You may not think that's what's going to happen, but I think that they do think that because they bought billions of dollars of Bitcoin, and they've placed a massive amount of their branding around it. And by the way, Bitcoin / crypto / digital tokens, were basically the largest political campaign contributors of the previous election cycle. So it doesn't matter, little commenters down below in the YouTube comment sections, if you think they're being honest or dishonest in anything else in their business practices or history, right? Like, all that's irrelevant. But people bring in their political biases with everything into trying to understand something that's new. And this is the bittersweet trade-off of having very famous figures, whether it's the Trump family or it's Elon Musk or it's Michael Saylor or anybody else. People take their preconceived notions of the feelings they have and the emotions of the person buying Bitcoin, and they apply that to Bitcoin. People hear the Trump say, oh, they think Bitcoin's going to $1 million, and then the haters or the negative commentators will say, oh, Bitcoin's never going to $1 million because Trump family buying Bitcoin, this is a top signal, and they don't actually believe that. It's all just fraud and grift and blah, 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 or whatever, right? And I mean, you can believe what you want, but if somebody is saying in public that they think a commodity is going up in price, and they are placing a significant percentage of their net worth in said commodity, while said commodity at the time of them buying is basically near all-time highs, That to me seems like some degree of conviction. And so all debate and all conversation of do they actually believe it or not, or do they actually understand Bitcoin or not, to me, all that is just noise and it's irrelevant. The Trump family thinks Bitcoin is going up, and they placed a lot of money on that line. They also sit on the board of Bitcoin treasury companies, right? Obviously, Metaplanet being one of those examples, but they also are positioning themselves in various different kinds of Bitcoin and crypto companies. Now, of course, myself included, I would be critical of many of the blockchain and crypto companies or products that they're getting involved with, but the reality is just the reality that they are trying to get involved, they're trying to learn, they're trying to expand, they're trying to infiltrate this industry. And so, of course, they want to do things that, in their view, are good for the industry. Maybe they're not going to be good for the industry, but I think this is something that's really important to understand. They are sitting on the boards of these Bitcoin treasury companies, Metaplanet being one of those examples, obviously, right? And of course, also, they have said that they want America to buy in Bitcoin. None of this is rumor. None of this is, oh, Luke Broyles made up stuff in his video again. It's like, none of this is stuff I'm making up. All of this stuff has been outright in public. And yet, so many people are replying to this news and saying, oh, this is just number go up, hopium, and this is a top signal or whatever, right? Quite literally, this post I made this post back on August 8th of 2025, so this is a while ago. This post I made got nearly 500,000 views, and over 5,000 people liked this post I made, right? And most of the comments, as you will see in just a moment, are negative, saying that this is insider trading, oh, Luke, you're a top signal, and this and that and the other. And it was quite funny to me. I did not expect this post to get the virality it did, or at least to me what's viral, right? I did not expect that at all, because to me, like, none of these things should be controversial. And yet all kinds of people in the comment section below literally were saying that, you're making stuff up, this isn't true. Some people deleted posts, some people were critiquing, my character or whatever, right? A lot of people were saying that this just flat out isn't true. It's like, all this stuff is verifiable. They bought $2 billion. This is not some, backroom thing. This, was a headline story when it came out, right? They are explicitly demanding Federal Reserve lowers interest rates. They have been saying live on stage at Bitcoin conference keynotes that they think it's going to $1 million, right? This isn't some, oh, there's some leaked audio tape of one of the Trumps in some back room saying they think it's going to $1 million. It's like, no, like all this stuff is verifiable. And so it doesn't matter to me what you think about the Trumps. It doesn't matter what you think their motives are. It doesn't matter what you think their education level is. To me, I think it is really bullish for Bitcoin when you are looking at the most powerful political entity in the world, which is the United States of America, and the most powerful, like it or hate it, the most powerful family in that political entity, the United States of America, being this deep into Bitcoin. Of course, it's hard to refute the concept that more politicians are going to continue down that track. And so, sure, maybe it's a top signal. But, and I wrote this back on August 8th, but I said then, and I believe it still now, I'm still told with a straight face by so many people all the time that they think that the Bitcoin cycle is almost over, or that they think we're definitely, for sure, going to top over the course of the next weeks, month, quarter, whatever they believe in their little opinion, right? And that kind of certainty is the kind of thing that makes me step back. I don't know what Bitcoin price is going to do in the short time horizon. I really don't know. Obviously, I think it's going up indefinitely over a long time horizon, right? But I don't know what it's going to do. And the fact that so many people in retail of the middle class, lower class, people with $1,000, $100 or whatever, right? I'm not making fun of people for not having a lot of money, by the way. But the point is, I'm making fun of people that aren't connected or that aren't deeply invested, whether that's with capital or conviction, right? The people that aren't deeply convicted in this asset, either, to the bullish side or the bearish side, they will have these certainties in their mind of what they for sure think is going to happen. And I just don't think that's very logical. If the people that are sitting in rooms that I'm not sitting in, having conversations I'm not having, think that Bitcoin is going up like this, sure, should I trust them? No, I don't. And I'll get to that more in just a moment. I do not trust them, and neither should you. But at the end of the day, I'm not as sure as a lot of the bears are saying that Bitcoin is definitely going to go down. I'm not as sure as you. I wish you all the best on your conviction, but personally, I don't have that conviction. Now, I do have the conviction. I do know that if you subscribe and smash the like button and comment down below, YouTube is going to push this video out to more and more people. I've put an effort to make this content free for you. Thank you for watching. And so please do me the least you could possibly do and click that subscribe button. It's free. It takes you 1% of the time it took me to make this video and everything, right? So please do it. It helps get it out to the YouTube algorithm. And hopefully some of these people that are sitting on the sidelines will understand once they see that the people with connections, not only on the Republican side, but the Democratic side as well, are getting into Bitcoin. Hopefully then they will begin to understand. Now, let's address some of the main criticisms. And believe me, some of them are really laughable and invalid, but others actually have a point. So this guy, Don, back on August 8th, said that your narrative is a top signal. And like I said, I wonder if it is. Maybe it is. However, it genuinely doesn't feel like it. Bitcoin grinded. Bitcoin has been grinding in this $70,000, $80,000, $90,000, $110,000 range for basically the entirety of 2025. The first 70 or so percent of 2025, plus, the very tail end of 2024, right? And, some, of course, being devil's advocate, some people would say that that's precisely how it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be a Wyckoff distribution. Look at the lines I drew in my chart and buy my trading course or whatever, right? And they would say this is exactly how it's supposed to feel. However, I'm really doubting it. I really don't know if that's the case because in 2017, the Bitcoin cycle top lasted for only days. Yes, Bitcoin went up all the way to the $20,000 level in late 2017. However, it was only there for days. In 2021, there was a double Bitcoin top in early 2021 and later 2021. However, we were only above that $60,000 range for mere weeks. However, the chop solidation between $90,000 and $110,000 when the Trump family made the vast majority of their buys, by the way, that was a multi-month period. And so the question is, there is so much more volume up here at this level, in the high 5, low 6-figure level. The question is, maybe this is a top. Maybe this is a top signal. Maybe this kind of optimism is a top signal. But the reality is, do we really think, does one really believe that the people the most connected are in this arena, whether you like that or dislike it, right? Do you really believe that they have become hoodwinked to buy the top? Typically the narrative goes that, oh, all the insiders, they low up, and this is grifting, and this is not fair because they're all buying cheap. You buy low, you sell high or whatever, right? Well, okay, you can't have these two arguments be together at once. You can't say out of one corner of your mouth that the Trump family is corrupt and evil and they're grifting because they're buying Bitcoin cheap and they're dumping on everybody, while at the same time saying this is a top signal that they're buying at these levels, right? Like, you can't have it both ways. Are they being evil, malicious people that are somehow rigging the market in their favor against you, or are they being gullible and being exit liquidity for people selling a Sobel? Personally, I think that Bitcoin is not done going up because retail sentiment is so overwhelmingly anti-Bitcoin, right? Yeah, sure, this post got a lot of likes and a lot of attention, but the vast majority of comments are so negative when it comes to this, right? And a lot of people, again, are bringing in their preconceived political notions to this, right? I'm not trying to be a political guy here. I'm just saying this is the reality, right? This guy here says that this is basically like insider trading and that this is basically Pelosi on steroids. Now, don't get me wrong. There are plenty of things that the Trumps have done that I am not approving of. There are plenty of things that Pelosi has done that I'm not approving of, right? If you think that just because I state these 5 facts, that somehow I'm making a moral statement, either of approval or condemnation, like, I think you need to, take a moment and take a breath and desensitize yourself. You need to maybe go touch some grass or something, right? But the point is that a lot of people critique this, not just with the Trump family, but with other politicians as they inevitably get more integrated into Bitcoin. A lot of people are going to make this accusation against you, dear Bitcoiner, and they're going to say, it's not fair that you bought Bitcoin cheaper than I did. It's not fair that the politicians are subsidizing your Bitcoin and forcing your Bitcoin price up. We should redistribute your Bitcoin. But the answer you should give them with, love and respect is just reminding them that insider trading can only happen with securities, not commodities. Obviously, market manipulation can happen with any asset. However, be precise in your speech and be precise in your accusation of what you're saying. Donald Trump is not Satoshi Nakamoto. And if you think he is, I got a bridge to sell you. But the point is that you cannot have insider trading with commodities, only with securities. And people don't even understand that Bitcoin is a commodity, not a security. And so, of course, the response to this would be that when you control the future of an asset and then buy enough of the asset to be the 5th largest corporate holder of the asset, how's that not like insider trading? And again, this is one of the things, of the many things I'm critical of when it comes to the Trump administration, the Trump family, right? That Trump coin was a grift. Trump coin was something that was not valuable. It is not valuable, in my opinion, and is not going to ever increase in value again in terms of Bitcoin. Maybe in terms of dollars it will. Actually, ironically, the meme of Trump very well may outperform the meme of the United States War Department. However, the United States military industrial complex. However, the point is that Trump coin, that is the thing that is not fair, because he is giving himself a large share of that network and then dumping those meme coins onto everybody else, right? So Trump owning 80%, and that's how much he owned, roughly, more or less, 80% of Trump coin was insider trading, not owning 0.08 of Bitcoin as they do now. And so for all the people that want to get up in arms and say, it's not fair that you Bitcoiners owned all this Bitcoin. It's not fair that you Bitcoin hodlers that were buying Bitcoin sub 100 grand before Trump was. It's not fair that he's pumping up your Bitcoin price to $1 million, blah, 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 right? The same people that are whining and complaining and say that, oh, they don't actually think Bitcoin's going to $1 million are the exact same kinds of people that when Bitcoin is $1 million, they'll say, it's not fair that you bought Bitcoin under $1 million. You should share with everybody, right? And I hear their point and understand their emotional frustration. But again, you should not take it out on people for simply buying and holding a commodity that they think has value in the present moment and the future. They should take that frustration and direct it towards the things that actually are not morally aligned with people. In my opinion, the Trump token or the Trump scam, in my opinion, right? So for people saying that the Trump family or that other people, they're somehow manipulating the market, even though they have 8/10,000ths of the network owned in their family, just the reality that it's anywhere close to the ownership of the Trump coin. In fact, that would be 1, 2, 3, 4 orders of magnitude more ownership that they have in the Trump coin. Now, don't get me wrong, 0.08% of the Bitcoin network is a humongous amount of Bitcoin that the Trump family owns, okay? That's 8/10,000ths of the network, right? That means that out of every 2,500 Bitcoin, more or less, roughly one of those Bitcoin is owned by somebody in the Trump family. And that's just with the public disclosures that we have. That's insane. That's crazy. They have been buying up very, very heavily. However, even though they've been buying heavily, there's nothing immoral about it because they are not the central issuer or manipulator of Bitcoin units. They may be able to manipulate the price a little bit. However, that is totally different than manipulating the underlying supply, just as people that run and distribute and dump meme tokens do. Now, something else, a different critique that I want to address here is this one, right, by Steve. He said he has to be honest that this post really threw him for a loop at the end because the whole time he was reading it as an indictment about the Trump family crypto grift that they were doing, but because of the context, this is good points, right? Now, again, I want to really emphasize it. This original post I made, I think it's got so much online attention, even though I genuinely wasn't expecting it. You know, this is one of the funny things when people say that, oh, Luke, you only make content that tries to get number go up views. It's like, well, not necessarily the case. You know, obviously that's something that I need to do in order to, you know, survive, but it's impossible to predict what's really going to pop off or not, right? You know, a lot of people really reacted to this post because they were viewing it as an indictment of the Trump family, when in reality, that's like, I mean, literally just trying to state facts. This post was not trying to endorse or condone at all, but yet people want to apply their preconceived notions and their opinions to it, right? So let me go back to what he was saying here, right? And so again, to clarify, Trump coin is the grift, right? And any politician that's making their version of Bitcoin or their political coin, it's just a new version of political currency. Trump coin is political currency within the Trump meme world, right? In the same way that the Chinese currency is political currency under Xi Jinping, right? In the same way that the ruble is Putin's political currency, or in the same way that the dollar is America's political currency, right? You know, and so sure, you can make all kinds of critiques you want. You could love this video, you can hate this video. A lot of people are going to press the down vote in this video. I don't care. The reality is the reality. I do not think Bitcoin is stopping. I think Bitcoin is going to $1 million. Why? Because I've studied Bitcoin as deeply as I possibly can over the course of years, and because every single year that goes by, more and more people reinforce this concept, okay? I was buying Bitcoin and I was studying Bitcoin in very high degrees way before Ray Dalio changed his opinion and increased his recommendation how much Bitcoin people should buy. I was buying Bitcoin before the Trump family was. I was buying Bitcoin when Trump was still saying that he didn't like Bitcoin because he preferred the dollar or whatever, right? And the point is that it's not that my worldview is changing, but I'm seeing more and more people who are well-connected, whether you love that or hate that, that are politically influential, whether you love that or hate that. I'm seeing them come ever closer to the worldview that I have. Sure, they are still involved with all kinds of Trump coins and meme coins and things that I personally am not approving of, or that I personally don't like. However, they are shifting their Overton window ever closer to this Bitcoin direction. This is really important as America eventually adopts Bitcoin for national strategic importance. Now, I want to make something very clear. You should not blindly trust any politician, right? A lot of people are going to comment down below and say, Luke, you're talking about Trump, therefore you're condemning him, right? Other people are going to say, Luke, why are you talking about Trump? Are you a MAGA Trump worshiper or whatever, right? I want to make it very clear. Again, there are things I like, there are things I don't like, just like every single politician. But ultimately, Bitcoin survives because it doesn't rely on politicians or single points of failure. And so, likewise, for you and your Bitcoin security, it is really important that you reduce single points of failure with protecting your Bitcoin. And one thing people are not aware of, or that people in Bitcoin are not thinking of, is that the politicians of America are going to take, I can't say steal because technically it's legal, but they're going to take up to 40% of your Bitcoin upon your passing. This is something that a lot of people in Bitcoin are not thinking about, and so it's really important I mention this since we're talking about politicians in this video. We're talking about, the legal structure, in particular here in America. If you're watching this video and you're American and you're an American, keep in mind that up to 40% of your Bitcoin, depending on your net worth level, is going to be taken from you upon your passing. And a lot of people would say, oh, well, I don't feel like I'm a high net worth level person enough. Like, you're eventually going to be. Like, what do you think is going to happen? Bitcoin's going to go up. You are going to be the top wealth class here in America. And so you are going to have a lot of wealth taken from you if you're just going to, go guns a-blazing and assume that you're going to somehow do everything right? The point is, if you have a spouse or children or grandchildren, you need to think about this now. Don't wait 5 years. This is really important. It is much easier to get the proper legal or trust structure when Bitcoin price is cheaper versus when it is more expensive. With the proper trust structure, you can increase your cost basis from your original purchase price up to a new level. And with the proper trust structure, you can make sure that you're protected against lawfare and lawsuits. You can make sure that you're protected against the estate tax. In some cases, by a large percentage, and in some cases, up to all of the estate tax can be deferred or just absoluted from the equation here, right? So what are the odds of some kind of lawfare or lawsuit being thrown against you? Not because they have anything actually against you, but they want to make your life difficult and to convince you to give them some Bitcoin. That is not something that is super likely, but it's above a 0% chance. This is something that the Trump family has had before. This is something, one of the reasons why I'm mentioning this, right? Again, you may love the fact that there was all kinds of lawfare and lawsuits against Trump family. You may not like that, right? But the truth is the truth. And that if you gain power, if you gain capital, if you gain influence, even if you're only 1/1000th as influential as the Trump family, this is something I've seen happen to multiple of my clients or just people that I've met in Bitcoin. If they have a very large amount of wealth, people, if they figure that out, will find a way to leverage that court system against you to where now you're stuck between your options are to lie under oath, which is something I do not recommend, or to fess up and give the Bitcoin or just pay off some lawyer or whatever, right? I don't want to see you lose your Bitcoin to some lawyer or to some legal process, right? And I don't want to see you lose it to the freaking US of A or the IRS or whatever, right? So your odds of lawfare are above a 0% chance. Also, the odds of dying, 100%, buddy. Sorry to be the one to tell you, but all of us are going to die, myself included. The estate tax rate is up to 40%, again, depending on your net worth level. However, assuming you don't want to die anytime in the near future, and assuming Bitcoin continues to survive and go up, you should assume you are eventually going to be in the higher net worth level, and if not the highest net worth level here in the United States. It's just a matter of time. And the odds of custody error when your spouse or your brother or your kids eventually inherit that Bitcoin, the odds of loss are inherently above 0%. This is something I have seen anecdotally many times in my line of work. I've seen many times somebody, the Bitcoiner family, passes on, and the wife or the kids only end up with half of what's left. In some cases less, in some cases more, but you should assume that if, God forbid, something were to happen to you and you were to pass on, you should assume your family is going to lose about a third to half of the Bitcoin in question, because there's a non-zero chance they make a custody error because they're probably not as obsessed about Bitcoin as you are, right? And also, there is the reality of the estate tax. And if your family is going to make the choice between lying to the authorities under oath versus paying up, they're going to pay up, which legally is the only thing I can say they should do. And ultimately, it is what they're going to do. And ultimately, good freaking luck competing against them. If you have enough wealth that you qualify for this, they are going to come after you. And believe me, I've seen this before. It is not pretty. Please, for goodness sakes, Don't let these politicians, I don't care what you think about Trump, I'm not singling him out here. This is true for all the politicians. Don't let them take your freaking Bitcoin, okay? Of all you Bitcoiners out there, every single person watching this video is going to die. I'm sorry, it's just true. But the reality is, of all the Bitcoin that all of you dear viewers have stacked over all these years, you should assume that the state is going to figure out a way to take between 20 to 40 to 50% of it. Eventually, it's a matter of time, assuming you do nothing. So my encouragement is, please do something. Get your legal and tax protection done ASAP. So many other people in Bitcoin, people that make Bitcoin videos are not telling you about this because it's not in the incentive of anybody's marketing budget to tell you about that, right? It's just the reality, right? But I'm telling you this because I've seen it happen firsthand. It's really painful and it's really sad to see. And the more Bitcoin you have, the higher priority this topic is. If you're watching this and you have 100 Bitcoin, this is exceedingly high priority. And believe me, I get those calls once in a while of somebody that has 50 or 100 or a couple hundred Bitcoin and they've not thought about this. That is exceedingly negligent in my humble opinion. Even if you only have 10 Bitcoin or 5 Bitcoin, this is something you need to start thinking about because even if you're 2 or 3 years away from implementing a strategy, it's never a bad plan to be planning ahead now in the present moment. So if you want to have a conversation on how to protect your Bitcoin from the lawsuit sharks and from the government while still retaining self-custody, that's critical. While still retaining self-custody, feel free to reach out to me. Let's have a call. Let's have a conversation. I'd be more than happy to help you. You don't have to choose between giving up self-custody versus keeping your privacy versus making sure that your family is protected, right? So let me conclude with adding another dozen or so points as to why you should be really bullish on Bitcoin and why the Trump family themselves are bullish. Now, like I've said, I gave 5 reasons at the very beginning of this video, facts of why the Trump family is very bullish on Bitcoin. Let me add a bunch more, right? This is an excellent post from a Twitter user called 21 Rates. He gives an additional 11 reasons as to why you should be bullish. Okay, fact number 6. Spot Bitcoin ETFs were approved by the SEC in January 2024, unlocking institutional and retirement capital access. Fact number 7, Fidelity, BlackRock, and Vanguard all launched Bitcoin ETF products with over $60 billion in assets under management combined. And by the way, it's the best performing ETF in human history. Bitcoin passed $1 trillion in market cap again in early 2024, establishing it as a top 10 global asset class. Yes, it hit a top 10 global ranking many years ago. However, it's consistently in this trillion and multi-trillion dollar level. It's consistently in the top 10 assets in the world. Consistently now. It hasn't just ticked it. It has actually sustainably been there. Vanguard's CEO stepped down amid backlash over the firm's anti-Bitcoin stance. You love to see it, right? And Trump's executive order in August 2025 opened 401ks to have pathways into crypto. And I'm saying crypto here, obviously, because this is not only Bitcoin they opened up the floodgates to, it's everything. Obviously, they have every authority to do that. People have the right to buy whatever they want. I'm not opposed to that. Obviously, I'm Bitcoin focused, but the point is, this is something I think that's really important. Most people in the 401ks don't even know that they can buy Bitcoin yet in that. And when people figure it out, I think they're going to be buying heavily. Unfortunately, they're going to buy a lot of crap as well, other than Bitcoin, but at the end of the day, that means more inflows to Bitcoin, less trapped capital over time. Fact number 11, the U.S. House and Senate passed multiple bills over the last year or a few months or so, limiting regulatory overreach by the SEC and the CFTC. This is really important, reducing choke points for Bitcoin adoption. Fact number 12, Tether's market cap has reached all-time highs, which is a proxy for offshore and emerging market Bitcoin demand. Okay, this is really important. Stable coins are really important for the future. And I think this is a part of what the Trump family is beginning to understand. They see and understand that these stable coins are a way to strengthen the dollar. Keep in mind, many years ago, Trump did not like Bitcoin because he was so pro-dollar. But now they are starting to see and understand, I would say, not necessarily at a beginner level, maybe not necessarily at a really intuitive level. I mean, give them a break, like they've, like the freaking family of the President of the United States, right? They got way less time than you and me, right? But the point is that they are beginning to understand that having stable coins helps strengthen the dollar. Whether you love that or hate that, there's a trade-off to everything. It helps strengthen the dollar. And stable coins work as a function of using Bitcoin as one of the assets, along with, guess what? U.S. Treasury bills helping back that stable coin, right? So that's really, really optimistic for Bitcoin. Fact number 13, energy giants such as Exxon, Shell, and Petrobras are now directly involved in Bitcoin mining. They have been for years, and that's not necessarily directly related related to the Trump administration. However, energy companies, fossil fuels, these kinds of things are much more supportive of the Republican Party. And I think that the Republican Party is going to really leverage that fact in the coming years of basically saying, hey, look, all you, tree-hugging Democratic liberal people we want to take Senate seats away from, guess what? Our fossil fuels are mitigating methane emissions, which has 84 times the warming effect of CO2. We're doing this with Bitcoin mining Yahoo, right? So, of course, this is not directly related to the Trump administration. However, I think this very possibly could become a major talking point in the coming years where, hey, which company or which politician wants to look like that they're fighting climate change and environmental problems? Again, whatever you think about that, I think that's just the reality. They're going to leverage Bitcoin for whatever their personal use is. The Trump family, they want to get rich, so they're leveraging it for that case. And I think politicians will leverage Bitcoin, like it or not, trying to fit their environmental narratives, trying to get reelected. Fact number 14, public Bitcoin mining firms are acquiring energy infrastructure, vertically integrating and scaling like utilities. Again, very related to the last point. I think they're going to use this point when trying to emphasize that, hey, look, our electric grid is really stable or whatever, right? Of course, now thinking outside of the United States, other countries like El Salvador, Bhutan, and the UAE are continuing to accumulate Bitcoin or integrate Bitcoin mining operations into their national infrastructure. Bhutan has the highest number of Satoshis per capita of their country. By the way, it's not El Salvador. Actually, it's not even close. Fact number 16, the final fact we'll talk about in this video, but Visa, MasterCard, and Stripe have rolled out Bitcoin-related settlement infrastructure or support since 2024. Again, these last few facts aren't directly related to the Trump administration. However, just as 21 Rates says, the parachute is right in front of us, but some choose to jump without one. Bitcoin is your parachute to escape the fiat political currency shenanigans, to escape the grasp of these political entities. And if you're going to retain this sovereignty with this wealth and give the least amount of that Bitcoin up to the authorities upon your passing or those kinds of things, highly encourage you to consider protecting your Bitcoin from a legal perspective and a tax perspective. I know you wonderful Bitcoiners, we're all so disagreeable. You don't want to pay taxes. You don't want to you don't want to deal with these things. You don't care what the law says. You don't care what the tax is. I get it. I totally get it. But guess what? The politicians, they care about what you say. The lawyers, they care. And the courts, they care. You may not care about them, but they care about you, and they care about getting that Bitcoin. And unfortunately, in the future, I do believe that so many Bitcoiners are going to lose double-digit percentages of their Bitcoin stack just because they didn't have the bare minimum estate planning, legal planning, and tax protection around with your Bitcoin. Average protection, average legal protection is not sufficient. Why? Because you are already, and if you're not already, you're soon going to be an above-average wealth holder in the United States. And plenty of people are going to feel justified attacking you with lawsuits or other kinds of things because they feel that it's not fair that you bought Bitcoin cheap and that you added the information and that you should share it with everybody. Let's take advantage of him. Let's try to take his Bitcoin with whatever means possible. Even if it's immoral, it still may be legal, right? So please, highly encourage you, consider getting various kinds of trust structures or legal protections for your Bitcoin. I encourage you to do it. If you want to have a conversation with me, this is something that I help people do, literally, 500 plus clients. We got 40 people on our team. We got some of the best asset protection attorneys in the entire United States of America affiliated with our team. And so I'm more than happy to put you in touch with them if you want to talk to them. But let's have a conversation about how to help you reduce the odds that the state is going to try to take a third to 40% of your Bitcoin. Believe me, I know this is the kind of thing that doesn't sound like it applies to you because none of us want to think about the possibility of dying soon, but I've seen this happen, and the worst possible thing, the loss of the person is way more painful than the loss of the money. But it's hard for me to see and have that conversation, and I've had it multiple times with somebody that just had a Bitcoiner die in their family, and I have to explain to them that, frankly, you don't really have a choice. What's been done has been done, and unfortunately, you're going to have to give it up. And your only other option than giving it up is to lie under oath, and that is not a good choice. And I've seen one instance of that, and that was a very bad decision. So hopefully this video has been of use to you. Hopefully you enjoy it. Please book a call. Let's have a conversation about protecting your assets. In particular, if you have more than $1.5 million of Bitcoin, let's have this conversation as soon as possible. But no matter who you are, where you are, American, not American, Democratic, Republican, high net worth or low net worth person, I don't care. Thank you for watching this video. Please subscribe. I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.